to the Truth in My Days podcast, where we defend the Word of God against the challenges of men.
Hi, I'm Dana Torts, and welcome to another episode of the Truth in My Days radio program. Today, I'm here with John Torts and Jason Chan as they discuss the important topic of creation and evolution. We are continuing from the previous episode. We hope you enjoy.
And so now, let's get into the meat of things here. Okay? This is background in basic science, which is we need to have. Now we can look at things. We have seen that there are, in fact, only two possibilities to explain the world and the life in it. Either it was created by God or it came about by random natural processes, which is the theory of evolution. And since there are only two possibilities, as Holmes says, if one of them is impossible, the other one must be true. So we don't have to prove creation. If evolution, if naturalistic explanations for the origins of the world and the life in it are impossible, then creationism is thereby shown to be true by our law of excluded middle. Now, there may be facts consistent with evolution, but as we saw with the murder of John Doe, if there are other facts that make evolution impossible, then creationism must be true. Any questions? Anything not clear on the nature of science or where we're going with this?
No, this sounds good.
And let's remember that Jason is an engineer. Yep. What type of engineer?
Mechanical engineer.
Still engineer, though. Yeah. And he's finishing his master's. So he knows the science. If we say something bogus here, he will spot it. So now let's look at the science of evolution. There are, in fact, several different elements to the theory of evolution and to naturalistic origins of life. Usually when people talk about evolution, they want to talk only about biological evolution, which is where you go from that first simple cell to living creatures of all the different sorts we see on Earth today and all the different sorts that have gone extinct in the eons since life began. Now, if we look just at the biological part, you know what, you can't do that because we have to look at where did that first cell come from. People want to remove that and say that's not part of the theory of evolution. They often get actually angry when you bring up these points, but we have to do it because it is certainly relevant to the theory of evolution. To actually look at life on Earth, there are four steps, four things that absolutely have to happen. And the four things are, you start out, and we mentioned this before, you start with simple chemicals in perhaps warm waters, little oceans on the surface of the early Earth. And these have to come together to form complex, ordered macromolecules. And there would actually have to be three different lines of these, your metabolic line, your enzymic line, and your genetic line. Some of those simple chemicals have to combine into amino acids, which then have to combine into complex proteins. Along the metabolic line, you need your lipids and your phospholipids, fatty acids, and so on. The genetic line, you're going to need these nucleotides coming together, purines, pyrimidines, sugars, nucleic acids, and eventually nucleotides joining together to give you RNA and DNA. You need all three of these, and you need lots of them. One protein won't do it for you. You need an awful lot of these molecules. And then they have to get together and form that cell structure. That is what we call chemical evolution. And then there's another crucial step here. And that crucial step here is somehow that cell structure has to go, because right now it's just a conglomeration of chemicals, it has to go from non-living to living. It has to come to life. It's a barrier that has to be crossed going from non-living to living. And then once it does that, once you have that first primordial cell, in order to develop into all of the different forms of life on Earth today, it needs lots and lots of new genetic data. In Darwin's day, they didn't know about genetics. Darwin claimed that evolution was based on variation. He had no explanation for where the variation came from. But he said there's variation and that gives you evolution. And his theory was almost dead in the water eventually in the early 20th century where they couldn't explain the variation. And then they mixed in genetics. And we know now, the gene code inside your cells, your DNA, extremely complex information-bearing molecules. Bill Gates said that it's like a software program, only very, very much more complicated than any program we've ever seen, any program we've ever been able to write. So you have these super complex computer code equivalents. Where did they come from? Who wrote the program? Could they just come together by random chance? Well, that's the theory of evolution. Yes, they just came about by your random natural processes. So already, if we leave out 2 other elements, we see already 4 essential steps. These are necessary for the theory of evolution to be possible. And if any one of them is impossible, then that's the end for the theory of evolution, if we're going by real science. Step number 1, simple chemicals, carbon dioxide, methane, ammonia, carbon monoxide, hydrogen gas, and so on, must spontaneously, so without any intelligence doing it, spontaneously self-assemble into complex organic molecules, proteins, DNA, and so on. Number 2, the complex organic molecules must self-assemble into a cell. Number 3, the cell has to come to life. And then number 4, the DNA coding of this cell must develop vast amounts of qualitatively new, meaningful genetic data. This is what the 4 steps that have to happen for the theory of evolution to work. Now, as I said, the evolutionists will like to scream and say that no, that chemical evolution part, that's not really part of the theory of evolution. We're not talking about that. But yes, it is. The theory of evolution encompasses far more than just the simple idea of how hereditary information is propagated through generations. That's the sort of thing they might tell you. It is, understand, and we looked at this before from Professor Larson, Edward J. Larson, that really what's behind the theory of evolution is a desire to push out God. So it's meant to be a comprehensive, materialistic explanation for life in all its forms, which does, of course, necessarily include life's origin. And that massive book from the year 2009 called Evolution, the First 4 Billion Years, editors Michael Roos, and anybody who follows the field of evolution knows Michael Roos. He's one of the top writers on this topic. Editors Michael Roos and Joseph Travis write this, quote, "From the history of evolutionary thought to the controversies over education, from the fossil record and the origin of life to the process of adaptation, the long essays offer primers on the major features of evolution." So there you have it from Roos and Travis in this book. The origin of life is one of the major features of evolution. When people deny it, it's generally because they know they have no explanation for it. They know it can't work. Okay, but we'll get into that. We should also mention that there's a third type of evolution that's necessary if you want to get rid of God, and that's what's called the cosmic evolution, cosmogony. Where did the universe come from in the first place? It's all well and good to talk about simple chemicals in the warm little ponds on the surface of the early Earth, but we have to ask, where did the early Earth come from? Where did the warm little ponds come from? And where did those simple chemicals come from? So where did it come from? It is here. It is structured. It is organized, the Earth. It has a shape, it has structure. We might look at this more in detail later, but right now, let's look at some basics. Where did the universe come from? Now, there's the possibility that it's always been here. Okay? And that's generally where evolutionists have to go, that the material universe is eternal. And the question is, can that be true? Can the universe have just always been here? What do you think?
I would say no. If we want to measure time, for example, we would have to have a starting point for time. So, yeah, there would have to be a starting point.
Yes, you've hit on the key point. The universe is not just here, but it endures in time. It is passing through time. Yesterday is gone, today is here, tomorrow's not here yet. And when we get to tomorrow, it'll be the new today. The time we're in right now will be yesterday, it'll be gone, we can't go back to it. We're always moving forward in the time stream. Now, if something endures in time, can it be existing from infinity in the past? Absolutely not. And here's why. Consider, for example, an infinite staircase. Infinite staircase. How long would it take you to climb halfway up an infinite staircase?
Infinity.
Yeah. Could you ever get halfway up an infinite staircase?
Nope.
No, you'd still be taking step after step after step after step. You could never get halfway up. What about a third of the way up?
Same thing.
Quarter of the way up?
Same, yeah.
Yeah, you absolutely couldn't. You could not reach any specific step if the staircase went back into infinity past. It's the same thing with time. If time went back into infinity past, you could never reach any specific point in time. And yet we have. Here we are. It's the year 2021. We've reached a specific point in time. Moving through time to get there. If time had been existing backwards into infinity, we could not be in 2021, and yet here we are. Attempts to claim that, well, maybe the universe didn't exist in time before is a really rather desperate fairy tale. The universe does endure in time. And as we'll see later as well from thermodynamics, the universe is running down, headed towards universal thermal equilibrium, commonly known as heat death of the universe. So if the universe had been here for infinity past, we'd be at heat death already, and the universe would just be a cold, dead place. Mm-hmm. So from the point of view of not just philosophy, but science and common sense, the world cannot have been here forever, which means we have to have an explanation for where it came from. And now we're back to that issue that it either came about by random natural processes or God had to create it. And now you're stuck because you have no universe. Cannot always be here, so it had to come into being at some point in the past. Before it came into being, there was nothing. How does nothing give you something?
Thank you, everyone, for listening today. Unfortunately, we have run out of time, but please join us for the next part tomorrow. Same time and same place. If you enjoy our content and think this is important material, the best compliment you can pay is by sharing this with your friends and family. This helps us out a lot. Also, if you enjoyed today's program, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to this podcast. We would love to hear from you. Thank you for listening to the Truth in My Days podcast with John Torse. We would love to hear from you. Please feel free to share any questions or comments you may have. You can reach us on Facebook, Instagram, MeWe, and YouTube. Simply search Truth in My Days as one word. Again, Truth in My Days as one word, no spaces in between. And you can connect with us. You may also visit our website for more comprehensive material and to learn more about our ministry. Our website is truthinmydays.com. Thank you.